I don't think every classic movie has aged well. So many are overflowing with sexism and racism, and beyond that, our preferences for acting and pacing and humor have changed a lot over the decades. Still, I love seeking out old movies. It's a bit like digging through a vintage shop, sorting through piles of worn out or scratchy clothing, only to find something beautiful, timeless, and truly unique. The hunt makes that moment of discovery feel all the more special. There is something beyond thrilling for me when I watch an old movie and find a scene or even just a moment that becomes electric. When the conventions of the past fall away and I see true, authentic, inspired storytelling that transcends age. If I were to pick an example, I would say the La Marseillaise scene in Casablanca is perfect. The tension and urgency of the scene and the beauty of the collective action all of these characters take cuts through any hang-ups I have about the pacing of the movie, and it makes the story blossom, if only for just a minute. I love Orson Welles. His work is regularly ranked as some of the best movies ever created, and yet there is something about his legacy as an actor and director I feel is never quite appreciated enough. His acting is incredibly subtle, grounded and confident in a way that you as an audience member can place so much trust in him. He was so revolutionary that he almost seems ahead of the times, clashing with more conventional storytelling techniques of the era. The Stranger is a 1946 film noir directed by and starring Welles alongside Edward G. Robinson and Loretta Young. Robinson plays Mr. Wilson, an agent of the United Nations War Crimes Committee, tasked with hunting down a fugitive Nazi named Franz Kindler. Kindler, played by Welles, has escaped to a quiet and peaceful small town in Connecticut. He has assumed a new identity as Charles Rankin, working as a prep school teacher, and he is engaged to marry the daughter of a Supreme Court judge. Wilson's arrival drives Kindler to resort to desperate measures to hide his true identity, which may hold deadly consequences. I realize this is very similar to the movie I just reviewed. I promise I watch movies not about Nazis, but The Stranger is small-town New England in the fall. So if you're looking to take a break from that Gilmore Girls rewatch for a lightly spooky movie to enjoy during peak foliage, this movie is in the public domain, so you can watch for free on the internet. The reason I want to talk about this movie is this scene in particular. My favorite moment happens when Wilson is invited over for dinner, about 30 minutes in. We, as an audience, know that Charles Rankin is Franz Kindler, and we've already seen him kill a fellow fugitive Nazi to protect his identity. It is with this knowledge that we enter the dinner scene, where the conversation steers toward the future of Germany and the hope of reform. Rankin is less than optimistic, beginning a poetic monologue about the anger of the archetypal German and the lack of a belief in the value of equality.
The German sees himself as the innocent victim of world envy and hatred conspired against, set upon by inferior peoples, inferior nations. He cannot admit to error, much less to wrongdoing, not the German. We chose to ignore Ethiopia and Spain, but we learned from our casualty list the price of looking the other way. Men of truth everywhere have come to know for whom the bell tolled, but not the German. He still follows his warrior gods, marching to Wagnerian strains, his eyes still fixed upon the fiery sword of Siegfried. And in those subterranean meeting places that you don't believe in, the German's dream world comes alive, and he takes his place in shining armor beneath the banners of the Teutonic Knights. Mankind is waiting for the Messiah, but for the German, the Messiah is not the Prince of Peace. He's another Barbarossa. Another Hitler.
If we hadn't already been told who he was, I'm not sure we'd still suspect him. Rankin is grounded, thoughtful, and articulate. His words display a condescension of the Nazis' death cult and culture of violence. It successfully convinces Wilson to move on. But then this happens.
In every other tongue, all men are created equal, liberté, égalité, fraternité, but in German,
there's Marx. Proletarians unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains.
But Marx wasn't a German, Marx was a Jew.
A small slip. The tiniest hiccup in the performance. Wells's acting is specific and subtle. That confident and assured, charming man we've been watching cracks a little, and we see the anger and the fury he's kindling within himself. We remember that he is a violent and hateful man. For me, the story comes alive here. It crackles with tension and simmering fury, with excitement. I forget I'm watching a 480p copy of an 80-year-old movie on YouTube. I'm at that dinner table, inside the story. It is this specific moment that keeps the story going. Convinced by his monologue, Wilson decides he's going to leave town. Then, later in the night, he figures it out. A moment also to just appreciate the editor for this transition.
Give me long distance. I want Washington, D.C.
Well, who but a Nazi would deny that Karl Marx was a German because he was a Jew? I think I'll stick around for a while.
I like The Stranger a lot. It displays Welles at his technical best. There's a take in here that's 4 minutes long. Some shots begin indoors and end outdoors, and everything feels like it's happening in the real world, in a real town. The lighting is gorgeous, the black and white is gorgeous, and the use of shadow is masterful. It's not as glossy or showy as something like Citizen Kane or Magnificent Ambersons, but there's a controlled intensity about this movie I find completely compelling. And it's not just that Orson Welles is at his peak handsome. Overall, it's worth a watch, if only to find which moment may feel electric and alive for you. You might not find that particular spark in this movie, and that's okay. You are not me. You have your own taste, and that is beautiful. There are plenty of old classics lauded by contemporary critics during which I can barely keep my eyes open. Watching art is not inherently virtuous, but I see plenty of value in continuing the exploration. There is gold in them there hills, and we are lucky creatures when we find it. Thank you for watching.
Soon she'll learn her fate, but it'll be too late. All her friends, they just watch her. For they know the great